Hello, my name is Myra, and for today's video, I wanted to go ahead and talk about all the books that I read in January. So right before I dive in, really quick, I just want to say, if you set goals at the beginning of 2024 to start on January 1st and say you started really strong and you've fallen off, or you still haven't started on that goal that you set, don't feel discouraged, okay? And I am also saying this to myself because I know that a new year is really exciting. It's almost like a reset button, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming, and I don't want you to be discouraged. Just know that whatever goal that you set, you can start it in the middle of the week on like a random month. It doesn't have to be the beginning of the year. You can start right after you watch this video. You can start tomorrow. Enough of me ranting because I will keep going. So first book that I started in January was Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Now this is a series, it's an 8-book series that follows Selena. At least that's how I've been saying the name in my head. I find that a lot of times I read a name and I think it sounds a certain way, and then I hear like an excerpt of like the audio and I'm like, oh, that's how you're supposed to say it. So if I'm saying it wrong, sorry, but it does follow Selena, who is this human girl. She's an assassin actually, and it follows her journey. This is actually the first book in the series as far as events go. However, it was published, I think, third down the line. So there is this whole debate of like if you should read it first, if you should read it second. But I personally chose to read it first, and I'm very, very happy that I did. And I do actually have a TikTok where I explained why I was very happy that I read this one first. But this is what I started the series with. Again, she is this human assassin. This is actually a bind up of, I think, 5 novellas. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 5 novellas. And it follows her as she's going through like the desert, and she's doing all these other things. She's being sent on like these missions because, again, she is an assassin. So it does have magic in here, or like magical elements. There's like mention here of like fae and other beings. So it is a very like, it's very, very fantasy driven. So this is the very first book in the series. Right after that though, I did go on to book number 2, which is Throne of Glass. And again, it's still following Selena. These books though are told from a third person point of view, which I did not know. At first I thought that was going to be really hard to get into because third person POV is really not my favorite. There's something about when it's told from like a character, like you really get to see like their psyche, like what they're thinking and what's leading them to, you know, act a certain way or say certain things. And when it's third person, you don't really know everything, but I do think it works in the series because, again, it's a fantasy series and you're not really supposed to like know everything. In each book, you start finding out other tidbits of information. You start finding out more about the characters and their background. So this was the second book in the series, and it's the second one that I read in January following Assassin's Blade. Now third, I did need something to like kind of refresh because I didn't want to just like fly through the series. And also, again, because these are the very beginning of a series, they're pretty heavy into like the world building and all that stuff. So I picked something totally different, and that was You've Reached Sam. Now, at first, I actually saw this book at Target and I loved the cover because the cover is just so beautiful to me. And then I read what it's about, and it's about this girl whose boyfriend is tragically killed in an accident. And it's not a spoiler, that's literally in the back of the book. That's what this book is about. They're actually seniors in high school when this happens. And of course she's heartbroken, and she now has to like move on because they had all these plans of like going to college together and moving in together and basically spending the rest of their life. And now this girl has like lost her significant other. Now it is YA, and I typically don't like reading YA. I didn't know if I was gonna like it. And let me tell you, I love this book. The funny thing is, I at first, I changed my rating because I hadn't rated it a 5-star. I ended up rating it a 5-star because I realized some of the things that I wasn't liking about this character is how she was dealing with grief. But everybody deals with grief differently. Basically, the main plot of this book, because I'm kind of going off a little bit, is that one day when she finally kind of gets the courage to go visit his tombstone, she backs away at the last minute. And she ends up falling, and her phone starts ringing, and when she answers, it's her dead boyfriend on the phone. They don't know how this connection is possible, but they're able to talk to each other on the phone. And so little by little, it like the whole book just follows her as she's grieving, but also she still kind of has a connection with him because she's able to talk to him on the phone, but she's seeing other people that knew him as they're grieving. And let me just tell you, I was listening to the audiobook and I was in bed listening to the audiobook, and there's a certain part at the very end of the book as like all these things are going on, and I was sobbing. Like, it started but with just tears, and then I just started sobbing uncontrollably. And I'm not someone that cries, so my boyfriend was like awkwardly like, are you okay? Like trying to like comfort me, because he really didn't know like what to say. He was kind of like, oh my god, and he's like, why are you crying? Like, what's going on? And I was like, when I finally was able to talk, I'm like, it's because this book, like this and this is going on. And he's like, are you serious right now? And I don't know, it's just also, you know, it's the way that he passes away and like their last interaction together is so realistic, and it's something that can definitely happen. And I can definitely see, and again, I don't want to spoil things, so it's like I can definitely see how that's something that I could even do without knowing that that's going to be the last time that you talk to your partner. And so I just, and like my boyfriend being next to me, it was a lot. I was sobbing, I was crying. And so that's why afterwards I went back and I'm like, you know what, this is a 5-star, because it made me feel all these emotions. And I wasn't even reading it, I was listening to it, which I know sometimes in an audiobook, I think if you're not careful, or like depending on the type of book, at least for me, like I can kind of get a little bit distracted, and then I have to go back because I'm like, oh wait, like I didn't even notice I was like kind of going off. But no, this book had me like hooked. So it was a really good book. I definitely recommend it. Don't be discouraged just because it's YA, okay? After that, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to hop back into fantasy. So I went ahead and followed up on the next book in the Throne of Glass series, which is Crown of Midnight. And let me tell you, for me, this book was where it finally really started getting a little bit better. Because Assassin's Blade, it was good. There's a lot of emotional stuff in there, but there's a lot of background too. Throne of Glass, there's a little bit more action, there's more characters, a lot more interesting. Crown of Midnight, again, more characters, more action, more things are happening, more development just between like the characters and the story. So I also really like this one. But again, I can't really go too much into detail because it's the third book in the series. But again, it follows Selena and like her journey and just these other things that are happening. Like a lot of secrets are coming to light. So it's a really, really good book. But this was what I read next. Now, after that, I actually read a book that's coming out this month in February, and it's called Switch by Sarah Reddy. I loved this book. This book is actually set in Switzerland, and you have these two physicists, and they love science, they work in science. However, she is very like, the love of her life is her career, and she doesn't do relationships. She enjoys having fun with men and being an adult woman and expressing herself, you know, sexually with other men. One day she goes to a pub, and that's normally where she goes to wind down at the end of the day or after a long work day, and it's like the way that she treats herself. So while she's there, she ends up meeting this handsome stranger, and they have this connection. Something really embarrassing happens, but he helps her out, and they actually end up having a one-night stand. Now, she doesn't know why, but she just feels this connection to him. And she thinks it's like one-sided, and it kind of freaks her out because she also has a little bit of like commitment issues. And they end up like, he literally tells her, listen, I've never believed in love at first sight, but I don't even know what this is, but like something, like I feel something. And she, of course, internally freaks out, and she goes to the bathroom when, you know, they're done hooking up, whatever. She goes to the bathroom and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I can't do this. I don't do relationships, but also I feel this connection with him. Like, I feel like I've known him. Like, I don't get it. And she's like, you know what? I need to do something that's going to calm me down. Let me go through my emails. Sure enough, she goes through her emails and she finds out that they are going to be meeting, or she's going to be meeting her new boss. And her new boss is the guy that she just hooked up with. So now she has two problems. One, he's her boss, or her new boss. And two, she doesn't do relationships. And so she is like, I need to like break this off, like this can't happen. And so he wants to see her the following day. And so the following day she's like, you know what, I'm gonna break this off. Now, I didn't like the way that she broke things off with him, because she definitely could have handled it better, but I do understand why like that kind of needed to happen. So you flash forward and now it's been 2 years that they've been working together. He hates her, or doesn't hate her, but doesn't really talk to her outside of just kind of giving her tasks and making sure things are being done, because again, he is her boss. But she always has had this connection with him, and she still thinks about him and wants to be with him, but she also doesn't do relationships. Now, one day they are both at the lab. They're about to close up the lab because it's gonna go under some renovations, and this accident happens and they literally switch bodies. So picture Freaky Friday, except it's a man and a woman who have a past, and he pretty much doesn't like her and she's like a commitment phobe but likes him, and so they switch bodies. Now, he has like his brother's wedding that he has to be in, and then there's things going on with her family, so they have to be a part of each other's lives, and they have to be there for the other person because they can't tell anyone what's happening, because they also don't know that anybody would believe it. And so it was just such a good book. I love Freaky Friday, but this was done like, yes, Freaky Friday, but also like in a very original type of way. Like, for example, she is a huge coffee drinker. He loves tea. He's British. He doesn't care for coffee really. But when he is in her body, he has like cravings for coffee. And I don't know, it was just like, it was such a good book. And it also explains like why she is a commitment phobe. And let me tell you, I'm like, okay, maybe her parents are like divorced, or, you know, she's seen people like their relationships fall apart. And no, she actually comes from like a very happily married couple that has been together for years. And it explains another reason and like why she's so afraid of commitment and like of losing herself in a relationship, which I actually found really refreshing because it felt really like different. I don't know. So it is coming out in February. I'll go ahead and put the date here where it comes out. It might already be out, so if it is, I'll let you know. But I'll put the date on here of when it's coming out. Check it out. Switched, Sarah Ready. So good. Next, I read the book that I had not gotten into, and I really don't know why. Divine Rivals. I still have this bookmark in here just because I need to find a spot for it, but let me tell you, I read this book in like a day and a half, I think, or maybe 2 days. I'm not sure. It was so good. So this one again has like it's not considered fantasy, it's considered more like paranormal, with like, it's a historical romance, I guess, or like historical fiction is what people call it or categorize the book as. But in this book you have two teenagers, but honestly they read very mature, who have this rivalry at work. Now they are both reporters, or they're trying to become columnists, and they're both fighting for the same position because there's only one columnist role. And so she absolutely, like, he is her work nemesis and she is his work nemesis, because again, they're both fighting for the same spot. Now they both come from very different backgrounds. He comes from a very like rich and prestigious family. She comes from a family that's pretty much not even middle class. She's like on like a lower middle class. So her family doesn't have the same connections that he does, and again, they come from very different upbringings. Now her brother goes off to war, and that's actually how the book starts. Now it's not a war between nations, it's actually a war between gods. So again, that's where that like magical element comes in, because there is gods in this like time, but it is set in like 1890s or like early 1900s. And so when her brother goes off to war, she of course like misses him, and her mom starts having all these like problems. She loses her job, and so now her and her mom are depending from her income, and you know, she's struggling now because she wants to make sure that she gets this columnist position, but she also has to be taking care of her mom because her mom is kind of spiraling now that her brother is gone. And she vents out her frustrations by writing and typing like letters to her brother. Now she has this magical wardrobe that basically when she puts the letter in there, the letter disappears. She has no idea where it's going. She's hoping that it's going to her brother, but her brother also hasn't written to her ever since he left to war, so she doesn't really know what to think. Now one day, and on a particular hard day, she writes to her brother, and just like always, and she actually ends up getting a letter back, and it says like that this is not her brother. And she's like, who the heck have I been talking to this whole time? And so now her and the stranger are going back and forth, and she's building this connection with him, and she ends up going on this whole adventure, and it's this whole thing that I really don't want to spoil, but honestly it was so good. Another thing that could like keeping me away from this book is the fact that it's labeled as YA. And although they are 18, 19-year-olds, it is so like mature, and I think it's also because it's set in the times and the things that like he's going through, the things that she's going through, and just this connection that these two have was so beautiful. And just the way that Rebecca Ross read this, like wrote this story, was like, I love the writing. So this was my second 5-star of this month. I really enjoyed this book. I really recommend it. I have started Ruthless Vows, but I'm not going to finish it right now, so that will definitely be on my February wrap up. But again, if you haven't picked this up, it definitely, in my opinion, deserves the hype. I really liked it. So this is another one that you should definitely check out, in my opinion. I currently am in the middle of 2 books. I'm in the middle or almost done. I have like that much left of Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas. Again, this is the next book in the series, so I can't get too much into it, but just know there's a lot more action in here. There's a lot more characters in here, and it's gotten really good. There's witches being introduced, wyverns or wyverns, I don't even know how you pronounce it, being introduced. So again, really good, but I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't want to say it, but I'm in the middle of this. I will be finishing it, so I'm just gonna mention it now. I am also in the middle of reading or listening to The Takeover by Kara Tanamachi. I am 74% in. I don't even know if you can tell. I don't think it's gonna focus, but I've been listening to this audiobook. I also got a hold of it on NetGalley. It actually just came out yesterday on the 30th, and let me tell you, I love it so far. I will probably talk more about it again at the beginning of, or like for my February wrap up, just to kind of really go into detail. But it's basically about a company who's trying to take over another company. This company basically takes over struggling companies and either like restructures it or maybe dismantles it and pays out the owners of this company, whether it's a board or a sole proprietorship, whatever it is. Now, these two though are rivals. So they've been rivals since high school, but now that they're older, it's been 10 years, they're both 30 years old, there's this attraction that they also can't deny. So now they have like that chemistry of like, we're rivals and we hate each other, but also you're hot now and so are you. So there's this whole thing, this whole back and forth. They're keeping each other on their toes. So I would definitely recommend it. Again, I'm listening to the audiobook and I really like it, but it just became available everywhere on January 30th. So make sure that you check this book out. Again, like I said, so far I really like it. Right now it's gearing up to be like a solid 4-star, like at least. So I'll see how the next 30% of the book goes and see where my final rating ends up. But that's the other book that I'm currently in the middle of and will be finishing tonight. So I figured I would just mention it now. Those were all the books that I read in January. Make sure that you stay tuned for my February TBR because that's coming up next. And yeah, I'll just be talking about some other books in February. Again, don't be discouraged if you haven't started your 2024 goals. It's never too late to start, okay? So thanks so much for watching this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye.